Hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you've had a great start to the year. I know I have. I have read quite a few books, but somehow I still feel behind schedule on my reading goal. So I hope that you are making good progress or doing whatever you feel is good in this new year. Let's just jump right into it because again, I do have quite a few books to talk about this month. Well, months, plural. First off was my book club book for January, which was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is a heisty, classic, like powerful orphans situation where a bunch of misfit kids who live in kind of the rundown part of the city they get mixed up in like gambling and dangerous crimes and lock picking when they're young, and so they develop these great skills and they become a pretty iconic gang. And all these misfits get the opportunity of a lifetime to go commit the heist of all heists and break into a place that has never been broken into successfully before, all to save a man who could have a potentially life-changing formula. And yeah, it was a pretty dramatic book filled with lots of gotcha moments of these kids just like annihilating adults who are like, oh, these rotten kids, I would have gotten away with it too. And the kids being like, yeah, I've been thinking ahead for the last 10 years somehow. I don't know, it was fun. I did like a lot of the gotcha moments. It's very satisfying. It's kind of like campy, very found family vibes, and I'm a sucker for that. I did have kind of a feeling about this book because I did watch Shadow and Bone before this, but there was a lot of little stuff here and there that kept me going. A little more interpersonal relationship development. You know how it is. But yes, that was Six of Crows, Leigh Bardugo. Next up, I read a very ominous kind of book, but also with the family vibes, but not found family. These ones were actually sisters. I read House of Hallow by Krystal Sutherland. And this book's about these three girls who have all their lives been kind of spectacles. Like everybody looks at them wherever they go and they kind of fall in love with them all the time. And they have these special personalities that are just like so unique. Like one's kind of like punk rock and one's like a struggling artist vibe. And then the other's like a shy book nerd, and everybody loves them. And they have like this weird effect on people where like if someone touches them, like they react weird. And these girls are kind of very like fae vibes, but as they get older, some stuff goes kind of wrong, and one of the sisters goes missing. And the main sister that we follow, she's like, I swear someone's stalking me. And so we kind of learn that maybe their vibes are a little more fae or foreign than we would have formerly thought or would have liked to think. And now it's coming back to bite them. And they're gonna have to figure that out, Like, what's really the truth of why they're so magical? Because even their parents seem to have weird vibes about them. And you'd think that their parents would be like, we have awesome, cool kids that everybody loves. But no, something's weird. And yeah, I liked it. I love a good fae vibey book, but this one was also like very modern and grounded, and it was just kind of like ruddy and gross. Like there's like this line very early on where the main girl is like, oh, I just admire my sister so much. Like ever since we turned like 14, I've just wanted to peel her skin off and wear it. And I'm like, girl, slay? I guess. So I don't know. It was a very like gritty read, but also like very majestic because you have these beautiful girls as the main characters. So it was a very nice balance. I quite liked it. So next up, we have Red Sister by Mark Lawrence, and I do love me a good Mark Lawrence book. But yeah, this one's about another classically powerful orphan. I don't know what it is about fantasy books. They just love making their orphans super powerful. And we follow Nona, and she is a troublemaker. She doesn't like listening to orders and all that stuff, which is really not great when you're an orphan. And she's got some spunk, and she works at this kind of fighting arena with her friend, and they live in this attic full of other kids, and they watch all the fights, and then they go and like help clean the training area, and some of them even get to go on to fight. And Nona's like, man, wouldn't I love to fight? But eventually something goes a little drama-wise, which I won't say because it's a little later reveal, and Nona finds herself in a bit of a pickle where she might be executed for a crime. And fortunately for her, a sister of a nearby convent comes over and she's like, that girl, I will be taking her. Thank you very much. I'm friends with the guy who runs this prison. Do not ask me questions. Farewell. And takes Nona away. And Nona's like, great, I'm going to a fucking convent. Awesome. But she soon finds out that this convent isn't any convent. It is one that trains little girls to be assassins. And sometimes even magical ones. So Nona's kind of in for a treat. So she goes and, of course, she's got a natural talent for certain things, but she is her stubborn self. And I liked this because I too am a stubborn girl who does not like to listen to orders very well. And yeah, I thought it was great. Dona's just like a classic girl's girl, so it was just a good read where you just have like a school full of girls and a girl's girl who's like feral, you know? Like she's like, yeah, I'm petty and yeah, I'm gonna protect my girly pops. So there's definitely some like petty drama between some of the girls, but it's also very fun because Nona's good at eventually winning people over, even though she's like kind of a stubborn bitch and a little bit of an asshole. It's nice. I liked it a lot. I'm looking forward to continuing the series soon, and I'm also going to be reading the companion series, The Girl and the Stars, I believe, by Mark Lawrence. So look forward to that. Next, I wanted to take a step into more vibey realm, so I read Spells for Forgetting by Adrianne Young. Normally, I wouldn't read this kind of book because it is a bit romancy, but you know what? It was January, February time. If any time to be romancy, I guess it's in your Valentine's Day, right? So I read this one, and it's got like apple orchard vibes. Not just because there's an apple orchard, but like it's just got like everyone's wearing flannel, like there's dried herbs everywhere. It's very like autumnal, so I guess I'm kind of reading it for the wrong time of year. But this book starts with our main male character returning to the island that he lived on all his life, but has left for one reason or another. He seems to be hated by everybody. It's kind of implied that he might have done like some sort of crime and gotten away with it, and so everyone's kind of like pissed at him. But his mom just died, and she wanted to be buried on the island, so he's like, I guess I gotta go back. And he does, despite his instincts telling him to stay away. Our main girl character has been kind of missing this guy for a while. There's some past there. They were besties, maybe more than besties, and he vanished, and she was like the only person who thought that he didn't do what he did, I guess. And so this is kind of a sore spot for her, and she's kind of just like avoiding it like the plague. But of course, as the book must go, they do meet up, and eventually they end up kind of thinking maybe there's more to what happened all those years ago than what they formerly thought. And now it's up to them to figure it out and like maybe even clear his name, even though he was never formally arrested. So it was a fun read. It was definitely like kind of annoying because a lot of random POVs would come into the book that didn't feel necessary. Like you'd be reading as the main two, and then like all of a sudden you'd be reading as like the main girl's uncle for like 10 pages. And it's like, I understand that there's information that needed to be portrayed through these POVs, but I feel like it could have been done in like a different way. Like maybe like the main characters overhear something rather than like just changing to someone's POV for a phone call. But it was very vibesy. I think it was a little less like romancy, so that was kind of an easier read for me. Like it wasn't a lot of like, we spent all day kissing and going on dates. It was just kind of like fighting for their lives in a way of like, what kind of mystery is going on here? Is there magic? And all that jazz. So I don't know. It was a hit or miss at some points. Next, I read Starling House by Alix E. Harrow, which is another kind of vibesy book, but in a different sense. It was a very academically vibey book, and this book gives off Monster House as well, if you remember that movie where like the house is alive, because right from the start, we follow a girl who has always dreamed of this house that's in her town, and one day she decides to just go up to it and take a look, even though she's been told to not do that because the people that live there are really weird. So she does, and she pricks her finger on the gate, and the owner of the house like storms out, and he's like, "What did you just do?" And she's like, "I don't know. I just, hey, are you hiring? I could clean your house for you." And he's like, "You know what? Fuck it. Sure. Come back tomorrow." And this is just the wildest beginning to a book, you know? Within like the first 30 pages, she's gone to this house, asked for a job, and gotten it. Yeah, in the background, she really needs this job because her younger brother is like kind of a genius and he needs a scholarship to go to school, but like also she has to pay for school, so she's gotta, you know, cover the rest of it, and she really needs this job, so it works for her. But also, this place is really weird, and it's also really, really dirty. Like, no one has ever been in this house for a long time. But she starts to feel like just in tune with it, really nice, like for some reason, like whenever she's looking for something, like she can easily find it, and all these sorts of like little things that just make it feel like a home, and she just feels herself spending more and more time there despite the warnings. And I can't say too much because again, this book is like it's kind of like a lot in one time. I will say I read this, and there are like annotation kind of things where it's like you'll like see her say something and then there'll be like a little one, and then at the bottom of the page it'll elaborate, which sometimes I read them, sometimes I didn't. There was a couple of interesting ones, but they didn't really seem to affect the story too much, so don't worry about it if you're reading it and you're not reading the little scholarly annotations. But I liked it. It was cute actually. I do think that the main characters had good chemistry. So now, I wanted a blast from the past for this next one, so I read A City of Ember by Jeanne DuPrau, which is like a book for like 11-year-olds, but I enjoyed it regardless because I don't know, I watched the movie when I was a kid and it was really good. If you don't know, City of Ember is about a city that is, you know, in a perpetual stage of darkness, and they rely completely on this generator that has kind of started to fail, so every once in a while like all the lights in the city will just turn off and they'll just be plunged into complete darkness for hopefully not that long. But things are going kind of badly, and we follow our main characters Dune and Lena. Dune is a naturally suspicious investigator, and he knows that something is going up, and he is kind of like a technical guy too, so he wants to go see the generator because he's like, maybe I can fix it. Maybe there's something going on down there. I want to check it out. Lena, on the other hand, she doesn't really care. She just wants to be a little messenger that like runs around, and she gets a message from one person and then she delivers it to another person on like the other side of the city. It's kind of like texting, but she's the phone. But one day she gets a weird message and she's like, I don't I don't like how that sounds. And so she goes and reunites with her friend Dune, and she's like, "What do you think, Dune?" And he's like, "I don't like this either." And then the investigating begins. And so these two, like, I think they're only like 13. These 13-year-olds are like absolutely doing better than the police. and and they're kind of figuring shit out. And yeah, I liked it. I did read the sequel, but it definitely goes from like 0 to 100 in an instant, you know? Like you're like, "Oh, la-di-da, yeah, things are sketchy," and then you're like, "Oh, that's what's going on here." So, I don't know. It's fun. It's just a good, easy read for me. Next, I read The Phoenix Keeper by S.A. MacLean, which is a fun, like, animal conservatory book about a zoo that has exotic fantasy species like griffins and phoenixes and all sorts of fun stuff like that. And I just I love animal conservation, so it was already a great time. But I really appreciated a lot of the little details about how they would talk about, phoenix feathers need to be like reliably sourced and like made sure that it's all humane and stuff like that. Oh, it was so fun. I loved it so much. But the main thing about this book is a girl who works as a phoenix keeper, obviously. Um, she's always wanted to be one, and now her dream has come true. But the problem is that phoenixes are like almost extinct, and there was a big like hatching that was supposed to happen in a nearby zoo, but something goes really wrong, and now it might be up to her to like get this other phoenix here and help save the species with her phoenix as well. So this is a lot of like fun little everyone works together, like it takes a village to raise some phoenixes book of people need to help get this habitat ready to go, they need to help pass the examination, they need to prepare for this new phoenix and potentially chicks, and all in the background, like maybe there's some romance going on with her and another zookeeper, maybe. Not that I really care, but that is a selling point. Yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was super cute with, again, all of the little like conservation notes here and there. Like, even though they weren't about real life species, it definitely shows that the author like has definitely thought about animal conservation before in like coordinates to real animals. So it was really cute. I liked it a lot, and I don't know, it was just fun. Next, I read The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. And if you remember Spinning Silver, this has very similar like vibes of religion and turmoil amongst a small village. This is about a young girl who is raised amongst these kind of like fairly wood people, they live in the forest, but the woods around them is like terrifying to be near, and they follow the old ways, and some of them have like magical abilities, like they can sing to heal or light a fire or things like that. Our main girl doesn't have any of those powers, so everyone kind of hates her ass, but it is all in a day's work. But the one thing about this village is that every year they have to give a girl to the Woodsman, the terrifying men of the like big city, and they take them away and does who knows what with them, but they always want a girl that has some powers. And this year they're coming for a girl who can see the future. And so the leader of the village says, hell fucking no, they're not getting that girl. And she takes the main girl who has no powers and says, shoo, you are now a seer. Go be sold to them and not our actual seer. And so yeah, this is about that girl and how she's like, damn, my village really sent me away. And she gets caught up with these people who are gonna take her to the king, and she again does not even know what he does with them. Like, maybe he keeps them in a dungeon and forces them to use their powers. Maybe he eats them. Who knows, really? So she goes with them, but a little ways along the way, some rebellion breaks out, and one of them ends up dead. And then later on, the spooky woods claims a couple more, until it's just her and one woodsman. And it turns out this woodsman has a bit of a side quest for them, and they're gonna have to survive together if they're gonna make it through. And that is where the drama kind of unfolds, because they fucking hate each other with a passion. So it's fun. It's a little like Six of Crows has a couple in that has kind of the same backstory, so it was almost like I was just reading their story separately. It was quite nice. I liked it. It was a little good elaboration onto their tale. I could just kind of implant them into it and be like, nice. Next up is a book in a series that I very much enjoy, A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. No, I normally wouldn't talk about prequels or sequels, but I do feel like this one is kind of its own separate beast, There are a lot of cute little references where you're like, ooh, it's from that other book, ooh, I know that person, but really you can read either of them first or second and have just as good of a time. The universe itself is just like super rich and awesome. And in this one, I feel like you get a little bit more of a, you know, backseat behind the scenes to like all of these separate little places that you didn't before. Like we follow a girl from the Priory, but this time she's like in the Priory a lot more. So you get to actually see how the interpersonal relationships work and like what exactly like girls are raised like there, because they are kind of like trained assassins with magic powers and yeah, all that kind of stuff. You get to just see a little bit more of like the historical side of it, but it's also just like super drama and like action packed, and like there's lots of pettiness, and you know me, I'm a petty bitch. I loved it all. So yeah, I definitely ate that up. I'm looking forward to the next little story that's coming out of it, which is not quite as big, but it's definitely going to be good nonetheless. And yeah, I liked it a lot. I love all of the little like interpersonal relationships that form, because especially in a book like this where the different regions are just like so culturally different, it's really nice to see them kind of like beat those barriers of having very drastic beliefs and being like, you know what, common enemy, we're besties now. But yes, a very, very good series. I highly recommend. Next, we have my February book club book, which was A Touch of Light by Thiago Abdella. This one was actually kind of a miss for all of us in the book club. It had a lot of good ideas, but it didn't really flesh out on the stuff we were hoping it would. In this book, we have our main character, Adrianne, who is a prince of kind of like a militaristic country, and his brother recently like died. That is in the prequel, so it's not, or not the prequel, the prologue, so it's not spoilers. You're literally like attending his brother's funeral. And yeah, his country is kind of getting invaded by this thing called the madness, where people just go cuckoo bananas and start killing each other, and they kind of behave like zombies in a sense, where they just like are really feral and like want to bite you, and you get infected if you get bitten. But I will say that it didn't really play out that well as like zombie-ness, because it ended up just being like they were basically like fighting normal people who had like battle strategies and everything, where I thought they were going to be like fighting feral zombies. Yeah. There's two other POVs. One is from a person that's called a sentinel, and she rides a griffin, but you don't actually see her griffin for like 90% of the book, so don't get excited. But Lynn's cool. She is like haunted by the ghosts of her dead friends, who had the madness, and she was like, I'm gonna stop the madness, and then it turns out that she didn't do that. And then our other person is Nasha, who was my favorite, funnily enough, because she is completely disconnected from the other two in the story. She is off in kind of a more tribal village vibes, where they have like trials in order to become like fully fledged members, and like all these different ranks of warriors where you get like stripes and stuff when you do cool things. And so Nasha is over there, and she is trying to just like move her way up through the ranks, because she kind of started as like an orphan nobody, and now she's like kind of in charge of some stuff, and it's a bit overwhelming for her, and not a lot of people like her. So there's a lot of like drama over there, and people trying to like backstab and get her caught up in ploys and stuff. And again, I just liked Nasha's POV a lot better. I think hers was way more fun. So yeah, that is A Touch of Light. Last for my actual books that I'm yapping about this month is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. I read this one as kind of a like need to get something off my shelf that's been sitting there for a while. So yeah, I picked this one up. It is kind of an interesting read of very different vibes. It had kind of the tribally vibes of Nasha's POV from the last book, but very quickly we moved away from that. We follow a boy who's born to a foreign mother and a very like high up father, and again like a militaristic community. And his mother, a little ways into his life, tells him that he is meant to be a vessel for a god. And at his like 12th or 14th birthday, I think his 12th, she does like this ritual on him and kills herself. And then his dad's like, well, fuck, now I've got this weird cursed son, and kind of just like tries to forget about him. But yeah, he goes on to, you know, follow his path, and he needs to get to a certain place by the time that the eclipse happens. And so we follow him, and then in another POV, we follow a captain of a ship who has been chartered to take him there. And in a total opposite POV, we have a girl who is in that city that he needs to get to. She's called the Sun Priest, and she needs to, you know, unify all of the clans of the city because there's been a lot of, like, drama. People have been murdered, assassinated even, perhaps, and everyone's kind of like, who done it, but they think they know who, but maybe they didn't, maybe those people got set up. So she's kind of trying to establish peace, but in the back of everything, she's got people in her little council who are maybe working against her and don't want to see her succeed. So yeah, I think this book would have been significantly better if we just followed the captain and the main boys POV, because honestly I didn't give a fuck about what the Sun Priest was doing. Every time I'd get to her POV I would just be like, ugh, again? Really? I definitely enjoyed the other two POVs a lot more, and I think it would have definitely benefited from a more rich focus on them rather than all of this stupid petty drama that's going on in this stupid tower that I don't care about. Yes. Now I'd like to welcome you to a new section called the sequel speed round. I will be talking about a bunch of either sequels or prequels that I can't fully flesh out, but I will tell you whether you should read them or not and why I think so. Let's get into it. First contender, The Missing of Clairdelune by Krystal Dabos. If you remember a long time ago, I read the first book, A Winter's Tale. It's about a girl getting set up into a marriage on like a really far away place, and she gets caught up in a bunch of political drama. The sequel, definitely worth the read if you like the universe, because it gets a lot more development in it. Next up, I have Harrow the Ninth, which, if you remember, we read on stream Gideon the Ninth a very long time ago, and I absolutely ate that shit up. I love necromancy. This one, as much as I love it, I'm gonna give it a maybe, because it's very different from the first book. The first book has very, like, kind of gamified trials going on. This book is just a confusing shitstorm, but if you love the characters and the necromancy and all of that stuff, I would definitely check it out. Next, we have Crooked Kingdom, the sequel to Six of Crows, my book club read. This one, I think, was a fun addition. It was definitely feeling more low stakes, but in the end, the relationship development was more high stakes. So I think if you like the found family vibes of the first book, you should pick up the next book. But if you're looking for something that's going to be even crazier and amped up even more, then probably not. And lastly, I have The People of Sparks, the sequel to The City of Ember. This one was a very cutesy, like, go out and discover the world kind of book. It definitely has some dark vibes, like The City of Ember, light pun not intended, but it's definitely more fun in that, like, people are learning what trees are and like learning how to grow stuff. It's really fun, and more relationships are developing because underground people are meeting not underground people, and we have so much to share with each other. So I definitely liked it. It's a quick read. And that is our very busy first 2 months of the year. I have been very productive, and I think I'm probably going to slow down a bit in March. So I'll have a couple books for you that we'll talk about a little bit more intimately. And until then, I hope you have good reading, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.